Tycoon. And today in episode 4, the title of tonight is You Aren't Retiring Your Mindset, You're Just Reassigning It. You aren't retiring your mindset, you're just reassigning it. So look, just to give some background, if you guys have been following the episodes, my name is Tony the Tycoon, aka Tony Hills, and athlete all day, every day, right? Going back into high school, I was ranked the #1 tight end in the state of Texas. I was a top 5 player in the nation. I ended up getting a scholarship to the University of Texas, won a national championship there, went on and got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2008. And won a Super Bowl there, and I had played almost a decade in the NFL. And when I retired, like most athletes, didn't really have a plan. Just knew that I didn't want to do that anymore, and so I retired without a plan. I went into what is psychologically known as athlete identity foreclosure, and I was in the wilderness, y'all. Like, I didn't know what I was going to do in my life. I did all these random things, trying to figure out what my purpose was. Long story short, I heard a man by the name of Myron Golden say something to the effect of, your purpose is found at the intersection of your proficiency and your calling, right? And so I took that lesson, and that became something that I attached into a movement. And so now what we're doing is we're sharing information with athletes about what's happening to them after retirement. And so this thing is called the Athlete Identity Foreclosure. And so tonight's session is episode 4, where we're talking about where your mindset, right? You aren't retiring your mindset, you're just reassigning it. And so when you think about that, when you think about what that actually means, what does it mean to reassign? Meaning that you still have the same particular mindset, you're just placing it, right, in a different arena. And in that arena, there's different principles and ways of codes of conduct and ways to create success that is different from the arena that you came from. And most athletes haven't figured out how to do that. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight, right? So Abraham Lincoln once said this. He said, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And that is so powerful. The best way to predict the future is to create it. Most people, there's 3 sessions, right? There's 3 sections. You have your past, you have the present, and you have your perceived future. When you're talking about your perceived future, meaning what? Meaning that it hasn't taken place yet. So basically anything that you perceive your future to be is just a made up construct, right? So like if you say, hey, I'm going to be a millionaire. All right. You're not a millionaire yet, right? But that's the future that you want to subscribe to. Great. Then the only thing that you can do to get to that path is operate within your present. Now, here's the interesting thing. Here's what holds a lot of people back. I look at things from the way that my mind works. I'm analytical, right? And so I look at things from a data perspective. What I've come to realize is that most people allow their past to be their prisoner as opposed to their professor. Meaning instead of learning from it, they allow it to trap them, right? And so because they allow it to trap them, their present time is suffering from the thing that they're looking for in the rearview mirror, and they're not able to move forward to the perceived future that they want to have. This is what I've seen with multiple athletes. I've seen it with people in general, but I've seen this with multiple athletes. And this is one of the reasons why it's so hard for them to transition, right? Because they haven't realized that they have these skill sets. They have this mentality that is so indicative for success outside of the game, but nobody has really told them how to discover that, right? And so the issue is you haven't lost your mindset. The issue is that your mindset has lost its target. It's lost its target. When you think about what being an athlete entails, especially if you started at a younger age, right? You already knew what to do. You had your system in place. You knew what to eat. You knew when to go to bed. You had other people, planning your meals and doing all of these other things that was going to allow you to find success. And then you were groomed in that. So if you started at a junior league level, right? It started with, you Pop Warner, cool. I got to eat my fruits and my vegetables so I can get big and strong. Okay, I got to go to train and I got to practice, and then I go to the game, and then we repeat, rinse, wash, repeat. Then we go to the next level. We go to middle school. Oh man, I'm in middle school. This is way bigger than when I was playing Pop Warner. And then now they have a strength and conditioning program, and so now we have the strength and conditioning program. And then from there, you go to high school, and it really gets real then, right? Because now in high school, now you're being recruited. Right. And there was no NIL in my day. Right. So I'm probably aging myself a little bit. But now you're being recruited. Right. You got all these people, telling you how great you are, and you have a process. So now the training is up even more. Now you're probably taking protein powder. You're taking your vitamins. You're making sure you get your rest. You're watching film. You're really honing in on your craft. And then you go to the next level, the collegiate level. Right. And it's amazing in itself, because only 2% of high school athletes even get to a D1 level. So you're at a D1 level. You're playing in front of hundreds of thousands of people, man. You're on TV now. You got a little money. Everybody knows you got all of these things happening. And then the ultimate prize for you is you get to the next level. You get to the professional level. And at the professional level, I mean, it is the creme de la creme. Like you've been drafted, you're on TV, you're on ESPN, you're rubbing shoulders with some of the celebrities, you're at basketball games, you're flying around, you're on Sunday night football, you're on Monday night football, you're on Thursday night, hell, even playing on Tuesday night now. You're doing all of these things, right? And this is your life. And so from the time that you were a young pup, 6 years old, to all the way, let's just say you have a 6-year career. Right? You got in when you were 20. You had a 6-year career. So from 6 to 26, that's 20 years, 2 decades. You've had all of this structure, and then bang, just like that, it's gone. Just like that, it's gone. Right? And it doesn't matter how it leaves. It can leave from voluntary retirement, like I did. I walked away from the game after almost 10 years. I was just like, hey, I've reached my capacity. It's time for me to do something different. Voluntary retirement. It can be involuntary, meaning that, hey, the team said, you know what, appreciate your services, but the league is going to move in a different direction. You still think you can still play? The league says otherwise, and you don't get an opportunity. Your body failed you, right? Maybe you were injury prone, and so now you can't get back to who you were or what you were, right? Involuntary. Those are some examples of involuntary retirement. And so now, within those 20 years that we talked about, right? You've been able to hone in on particular skill sets. And we'll talk about those skill sets in just a second. But nobody has shown you how to leverage those skill sets to have success off the field, because you were so focused. You were so singularly focused on the task at hand, right? That nothing else mattered. There's a psychological term called identity exploration. Why is this so important? Because in an identity exploration phase, this is a phase to where you get to do multiple things, right? In order to figure out who you truly are. I'll give you an example. There's a guy that I met a few nights ago. His name is Nate. And Nate is multi-millionaire. And he has a 10-year-old son. Son is really, really good at golf, right? And I'm like, hey, so, is that the plan for him? You're gonna go the golf route? He's like, oh man, you know what? I let him do it all. He does mixed martial arts. He does basketball. He plays football. He does soccer. I let him do it all, man. I don't tell him which way to go. That's so important for this young man. And as he's telling me about this, I'm just so fascinated, because I'm like, this kid is going to be okay. And the reason why I know that is because he's in that identity exploration phase. He's doing multiple things until he finds out exactly what it is that he wants to do. His talent is in golf, right? But he might want to be a soccer player. Who knows? Whatever it is. But he has that ability to choose. It wasn't stamped on him on the outside to say, oh, you're a golfer. That's all you're going to do. That's not what his dad is doing. So kudos to him. But that's what most athletes deal with, right? So here's what I've come to realize. The issue is not that you've lost your mindset. The issue is that you've lost your target. You've lost your target. The target was baseball. The target was swimming. The target was softball. The target was tennis. The target was football, right? That was the target. You lost your target. There's a silence that happens after the game. As you guys can see, I have on the merch shirt for the Quiet Arena podcast, right? And in the Quiet Arena podcast, one of the things we talk about is when the game was removed from you and you were in that silent space, take us through that moment. I always have my guests take us through that moment. And it's so interesting what they discover. How they weren't prepared. How they felt like the game was ripped away from them. How they felt like their identity was torn away from them. You get all of these different responses. And it's interesting because when I make it personal for me, my situation was totally different because I walked away from the game, right? I still had a contract. I was actually under contract with the Detroit Lions. I was going in my 10th or 11th year. And I just knew I didn't want to do this anymore, right? And so I walked away from the game. But even still, with me choosing to walk away from the game, there was still a space to where I was like, but what the heck am I going to do right now? Like, what am I going to do in my life? I knew I didn't want to do football anymore. I knew I didn't want to play football anymore. I knew that was over, but I didn't know what I wanted to do afterward. And so I wandered in the wilderness, man. Listen, first couple of weeks, played video games, was playing with my kids, just doing all different types of hobbies, working out. What happens is with athletes is when the game is removed from them, they go back to the only thing that they know. So they go back to working out, right? So because that's the discipline and the structure that they had. So they go back to that thing that's comfortable to them. Okay, I'm gonna wake up in the morning, I'm gonna go lift weights, I'm gonna work out. But once you do all of that, man, now you got all this free time because there is no practice, there are no meetings, there are no, walkthroughs and things of that nature. There's no more traveling. All of that stuff is gone. So those hours that were filled up, they're now just empty space. And you have to figure out what you're going to do with that. So what you come to realize is that it's not just the game that athletes are missing. They're missing the structure. They're missing the assignment. They're missing knowing where to aim their discipline. Some of the most disciplined people that you'll ever meet are athletes. But when they retire and the game leaves, or they leave the game, either or, it's like, where do I put this? Where do I find the perfect fit for all of these skill sets that I've been able to acquire? I just don't know where to put it, right? So subsequently, you see that the mindset is still there. It's just the mission has changed. You have to find a new mission, right? And so that gets me into the point of where I talk about the law of identity. And what the law of identity states is that you never place your identity on anything that can be taken away from you, right? Because when you do that, what tends to happen is you move into what I call the wilderness space. You're lost. You're lost. Think about this. You see this often too with military people. You think about controlling and commanding, hundreds of people in high stressful situations, and the amount of physical and mental sharpness that you have, right? Because your decisions could be life or death. Think about being in that situation for years. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's over. You retire. And now you got to come back to being a civilian. That struggle, when you've operated on a level that high and the stakes were that high, and now you come down from that, and now you're trying to figure out how to operate within this plane, that struggle is so detrimental to so many people because this is uncharted territory. And here's for the people that may not have played or been on that level that'll watch this, I want you to think about the fear that you have when it comes to trying new things, just new things, right? For instance, if you're somebody that is an introvert, and now one day you say, you know what, I want to be a public speaker. I want you to think about the terror and the fear that you have the first time you get up on that stage. That is the exact same fear that most athletes have when they retire. Because the game gave them purpose. And because we weren't taught that our purpose is found at the intersection of our God-given talent and who we're called to serve, because we weren't taught that our purpose is aligned with who we are, whose we are, and who we serve, because we weren't taught those things, we believe the game to be our purpose. So now that the game is gone, subsequently in our mind, we believe our purpose is gone with it. And that's when you start seeing a lot of the things that we're seeing, right? We start seeing the mental health disorders. We start seeing the divorce rates. We start seeing the economic decline because I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with all of these skills that I was able to bring in this space, but now I'm in a space to where I'm in uncharted territory. I don't get it. I don't know how to move. You had a routine. One of the most important things for an athlete is routine, consistency, right? That's the only thing that they know. And then on top of that, for an athlete, there's also an instant gratification feel too, because there's feedback that you get after any practice, any game, right? The tape. So think about this. You operate in a high performance league. You operate in a high performance league, right? And your performance is judged depending on whatever level you're on. It's judged by the world, it's judged by your peers, your performance is judged, right? If you make a mistake, you miss a block, you miss a catch, anything like that, right? You immediately can go and watch the tape and see where you messed up. In life, it's not like that. In life, it can take you years to realize something that happened to you when you were 6 years old is affecting you at 36. You don't have that instant feedback. Your subconscious is on autopilot, or your conscious is on autopilot based off of the information that your subconscious has taken in. So if you haven't done the work to be able to establish what's really happening within you, it's like being unplugged from a power source, right? Like people have these Teslas. They're amazing cars, right? They can drive by themselves, right? You don't have to worry about gas, all that type of stuff. It's great, right? But what happens if you never plug it up? It doesn't go anywhere. You removed it from the power source. That's what happens with athletes. Their power source was their sport. So the game gave them feedback. The game gave them an identity. The game gave you a community. It gave you a room that you belong to. You knew that space. You knew that world. You knew the people in it. You knew the rules and the regulations and the codes. You knew all of those things. When you lead a game, it's different. It's different. When an athlete leads the game, they have all of these tools, all of these mindsets, but they have no playbook. They have no playbook. That's why most of them struggle. Okay, I'm disciplined. Okay, I understand how to read systems. I just don't know the layout of the land. I don't understand this landscape. And the thing is you'll have people in your circle. We talked about that in the last episode, your inner circle, middle circle, outer circle. You'll have people in your inner circle. Those are the people that are closest to you. Those are the people that are closest to your heart. They really love you. They want to see you successful. They want to see you win, but they can't understand who you are because they haven't been at the level that you've been. So no matter how much they try to empathize or sympathize with you, they'll never understand. That's why it's so important when athletes transition out of the game to have mentors, people that have been through that space, that have been through the wilderness and have gone to the promised land. It's so important to have that, right? Because having that allows you to talk to somebody that can understand where you're coming from. Not somebody that is sitting on the sidelines and, speaking to you from a standpoint of, okay, I'm trying to get it. I'm trying to understand. Does it feel like this? Not that. Hey man, I know exactly what it feels like to be in that locker room and be with your boys having a great time. And then one day you wake up and it's all gone. I know what it feels like when you retire for the first time and you hop out of bed because your alarm didn't go off and you think you're going to be late for a meeting and get fined. And all of a sudden you realize, oh shoot, I don't do this anymore. I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to be a man that has to provide for a family, but you don't know what your next move is. And you see the money moving down and you don't know what to do, but you're too prideful to tell people I need help. I know what that feels like. Those are the people that can help you. Specifically the ones that have found success. One of the best things that I could have ever did was get me mentors that played the game and understood where I was coming from and helped me to identify what the issues were that were happening within my life internally so that I could produce the outcome that I wanted to produce. And that's where I came up with the theory of this saying theory, whatever you want to call it. But I came to a discovery over the years after I retired, right? So I'm almost going in June or July of 2027. I'll be almost 10 years retired. But in that time, I learned that no matter how hard I went after something, I was not going to get the result that I wanted because intrinsically I wasn't aligned. So I came up with the law. Okay, this is the law of alignment. You cannot produce anything extrinsically that you are not intrinsically. You can only produce that extrinsically of what you are intrinsically. So see, the thing is that when you look at it from a principle or a biblical standpoint, the Bible and the world are total opposites, right? All the things that the world tell you to go after, the Bible tells you to flip that. So if it's materialism, the scriptures deal with spirituality, right? If it's being seen and being celebrated by the world, the scriptures tell you to have humility. Let God raise you up. I'm just giving you that analogy to understand that there's a principle, right, that takes place in the spiritual realm. And so we understand principles because we understand the law of gravity, right? I have my notes in my phone, right? I throw this phone in the air, it's going to come right back down. It's the law of gravity. That's a principle. There are principles in the scriptures, and this is not a religious situation. It's not, if you believe in God or not, that's not what we're talking about. But what we do know is that there is an entity, there is a power, and that power has created life principles. And if you are able to identify what those principles are and place yourself in alignment with those principles, your life will be different. And this is not something that I'm speaking of from a theoretical standpoint. These are principles that I've tried, tested, and been proven. And so the success that I've been able to garner after the field has come from the success that I found by following these principles. Redirecting and here's the beautiful thing, redirecting my mindset to understand that the game, that the sport was my platform. It was not my purpose. And it took me years to figure that out. I don't want that to be the same story for other athletes. I don't want it to take them years to have to figure that out. Right? So this is the reason why I make these tycoon talks. It's also therapeutic for me. I love sitting down and talking to the people. Right? So the mindset is still there, but the mission has changed. We understand that when the game ends, the athlete is left with the same tools, but no playbook. And so what I want tonight to be about is about giving you a language, right? Giving you a language to identify what the game already built inside you. How do I identify those principles and then use those transferable skills to find success outside of the game? So when I got into the business space, right, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? I thought I was like, okay, yeah, I want to be an entrepreneur. But I knew that there were certain things that I needed to learn. So I got into sales. I was like, okay, everybody that I'm seeing that's making the big money, they're in some sort of sales. I need to get into sales. So I got into sales. And when you're talking to these leaders, these business leaders, these partners, these people that run these multi-million and multi-billion-dollar corporations, of course, they're enamored with the fact, oh my gosh, you played in Texas, you won a national championship. I remember watching you, and oh man, I saw the Super Bowl. That was such a great game. Like, you're going to get that as an athlete. Understand that. You're going to get that, right? But eventually what happens is that wears off, and you start seeing that they're impressed by your resume, but they care more about the skill sets that are behind the resume. So I started getting questions like, okay, well, look, now that we've had we've been starstruck, let's get into the business. How do you handle pressure? Right? These are some of the questions I got. How do you handle pressure? Tell me about your leadership skills. How do you solve problems? Right? How do you adjust when the plans fall apart? How do you operate how do you operate with others? How do you take coaching? How do you show up, after failure? These were the questions that they started asking. And I'm like, yo, I've been in all of these situations. And time after time after time after time after time, I've been able to prove my value and execute in all of these situations. I know exactly how I'm going to show up after failure. I know exactly how to lead a team. I've been a captain. I know exactly how to take coaching. I know all of these things, right? So I realized, okay, I just have to figure out how to take the things that the game gave me and then transfer that over into the space that I'm in now. And so the thing that I loved about sales is that sales felt the closest to being in sport that I had ever felt. There's a camaraderie there. There's competition there. There's, everybody is chasing the same, or I won't say chasing, everybody is moving towards the same goal. I was like, this feels really familiar. That's why I got into sales, the familiarity of it, the challenge of it, the whole eat what you kill vibe. That's me all day. And I knew that succeeding in that space would ultimately, at some point, one day, allow me to succeed as an entrepreneur because it's the same type of space. So I started identifying what these skill sets were that I had that were going to be able, that I can carry with me to give me success. And then I started also learning this too, right? Because there's two sides to everything, right? You ain't never ate a one-sided sandwich. There's two sides to everything, right? I started also identifying the mentality and the mindset that worked well. Oh, this is so good. Come on, God. I started identifying the mentality and the mindset that worked really well in the arena of combat sport, but that didn't carry over in the arena of dealing with people. It did not carry over in the arena of dealing with people. Violence, the mentality, great. Having that type of mentality in this arena, not great. So I had to start figuring out, okay, how do I remove that off? How do I take that off my shoulders? How did I remove that off my mind? How do I start to download a different program, right? Think about back in the day, it will show my age a little bit, but the computers back in the day were not like the computers of today, right? We used to have these little floppy disks, right? And so what would happen is you would have updates, right? You'd have updates. And when you got an update, you get the floppy disk, and then they move to CD-ROM, right? And then you would have to plug it in and sit there and let it run its course until it updated the entire computer. And so what would happen is that if you didn't have the proper update, then the computer wouldn't function right. Same machine needed an update. It's the same thing for an athlete. Having to identify what skill sets are transferable for success. What skill sets do I need to push off? Because I know that those things are not going to be indicative of me moving in the direction that I want to move in. Right? So as they're asking me those questions, I came to a realization that they weren't just asking me about football. They were asking me about how football or how sport in general trained me to think. Athletes, you guys and girls, never want to, all my people, all my athletes, y'all are some of the most brilliant individuals. The way that you process things, your processing speed is off the charts. Making adjustments, being able to thrive in high pressure environments. This is why businesses want to hire you so much, right? Because what you'll come to realize when you're in those spaces, and we're talking about business here, we're talking about transferring, athlete skills to the business world, entrepreneur world. That's what we're talking about. This is the mindset, right? I'm in business. I talk business. Nobody had to teach you pressure. Nobody had to teach you accountability. Nobody had to teach you teamwork. Nobody had to teach you how to prepare. Nobody had to teach you how to adjust. The game already trained you on all of those things. It already trained you on all of those things. But what you have to be careful of, and this is why I'm so big into this athlete identity foreclosure space. You have to be careful of tying your identity to your sport, because when the sport leaves and you're now in a different environment, like we've talked about, you now leave all of those skills behind, and some of those skills could serve you so that you could have the future that you want to have, so that you could have the fulfillment that you want to have. I have this stat here. It says there are over 500,000 NCAA student athletes. Fewer than 2% will go pro in their sport, right? So that means that most athletes are going to have to go pro in something else. They're going to have to become someone else. 98% of those 500,000 people are not going to the next level professionally. You come to find that businesses, brands, because you're talking about NIL, so businesses, brands, anything that you can think of that wants to get their hands on an athlete, you come to find that the athlete hasn't lost their value. They just haven't learned how to transfer it. That gets us into a whole different type of conversation, and I won't go into that now because I want to stay on topic with the notes that I have. But listen, and this one's more for the brothers. This is for my guys. Your value is not tied to your pocketbook. Your value is not tied to your pocketbook. You have to understand, as an athlete, you have something that all these businesses and these entrepreneurs and these brands want. You have what's called social capital. Because of what you did, there's an esteem that's placed upon you. And if you can understand how to leverage that and how to use that, it can make you very successful. Right? So we get to this part of the conversation where we say, okay, Tycoon, I hear everything that you're saying. I agree with you. How do I take the skill sets that I've been able to acquire? I've been playing ball since I was 6. I retired since I was 26, so over 20 years, 2 decades, I've had these skill sets. How do I take those skill sets that I acquired and make them work for me? Great question. Glad you asked. This is where you take out your notebooks. All right. So I call this the reassignment loop. This is something that it's in my book. You see my book behind me, What to Do When It's Done. This is the reassignment loop. You have to recognize, reframe, repackage, and then redeploy. All right. So the first thing is you have to understand the difference between hard skills and soft skills, right? Hard skills are technical, right? Like you're good at Microsoft Excel, stuff like that, right? Those are hard skills. Soft skills, they're more relational. They're more leadership based, right? And a lot of athletes operate heavily in the soft skill space. You guys were co-captains or captains of teams, right? You understand how to lead. But you also operate in the hard skill space too. Technicality, right? How you we'll talk about basketball, right? Like taking 1,000 shots a day, sprinting to certain points. Like there's all different types of things that align within the hard and the soft skill space, right? You guys get it. I'm not going to, I don't want to dive deep into that. I just want to make you aware of what that is, right? So one of the skills that you possess is focus. That is a skill set. That is a hard skill set. Because in a culture that rewards performance, focus and substance is something that needs to be locked in on. Some of the most elevated individuals that I've ever met, deep thinkers, have extreme focus. My boy Malcolm, met a guy named Malcolm. Malcolm is multi-millionaire. He has his system of how he runs his life integrated with his family, and it's like a well-oiled machine. From this time to this time, I do this. From this time to this time, I do this. From that time to that time, I do this. This time to this time, that's family time. Everything's cut off. It's amazing to see. Because I'm looking at that and I'm saying, that's a playbook. That's a playbook. Here's a man that's never played the professional space. Haven't done that. Crafted a system, found him success. The reason why that's so important, and don't miss this, is because you can see we talked about principles. Principles are true. Principles are truth. There's a difference to what's true and what is truth. What's true is that I'm speaking to you guys right now. But that true will change. Because when this is over, I'm no longer going to be speaking to y'all. But truth never changes, and principles are aligned in truth. So if we understand that, now we start to move in a space to where we're saying, okay, I'm starting to get, if I get that one principle, changes my life. Changes my life. Right? So I'm gonna give you some examples, right? Just because I want to make sure that I'm honing in on this. I know I said earlier, I don't want to go too deep in it. I'm not, but I do realize that I need to give some examples, right? Because I mean, look, if you've been doing one thing for your entire life, or like you've never even thought about or heard about the difference between hard skills and soft skills, you'll know it, but it hasn't been talked about. It's not something that we talk about. Like, we're not in the locker room talking about, hey man, what's your hard skills and soft skills? Like, we're not doing that, right? So give you some examples. Strategy, that's a hard skill. Film study, data analysis, time management, performance tracking, process execution. Those are things that athletes possess. Those are your hard skills. Those are just examples of some. When you talk about soft skills, leadership, communication, teamwork, resilience, coachability, emotional control, conflict resolution. Those are your soft skills. Employers look for career-ready competencies, like communication, critical thinking, leadership, professionalism, teamwork, technology, and career development. That's the reason why they want athletes. Because athletes operate in all of these spaces. Your sport has prepared you and aligned you for all of those spaces. So let's connect it. We talk about communication. For us football guys, that's the huddle. When you talk about critical thinking, that's reading the offense or the defense. Leadership, that's you holding the standard. You're a captain. If you've ever been a captain, there's a standard. Mike Tomlin used to say this all the time when I was in Pittsburgh. The standard is the standard, right? No excuses, no explanations, only results. The standard is the standard, right? Professionalism, that's showing up prepared. Teamwork, that's knowing your role in the system. And in technology, that's your film, your tablets, your data, your scouting reports. Those are those things. When you talk about career development, that's taking feedback and then improving on it. I pray you guys are getting this. So important. This is so good. So important, right? So the workplace is not asking athletes for something foreign. It's asking for something the game already trained them for. So when we talk about the first pillar of this framework, right? Reframe. The first pillar of this framework of reframe, you have to identify what's already inside of you. You cannot redeploy, right? You cannot redeploy what you refuse to recognize. I'm going to say that again. You cannot redeploy what you refuse to recognize. You have to understand that there's going to be some internal work that you have to do as an athlete because there's been a separation. There's a divorce. There's a divorce of sport. If anybody's ever been through a divorce, you understand what that feels like. It's hard. There's a divorce of sport. There's things that are happening inside you, and you cannot put those things into the atmosphere and expect success if those things are negative and are not conducive to the wins that you want to create for yourself. You have to do the internal work in order to do that. Right? Proverbs 20:5 says this: counsel in the heart of a man is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. This is the reason why you need mentors. People that have been where you've been, seen what you saw, and can tell you where you need to go. This is so important. This is so good. So important. I believe all athletes need mentors in their life that have done what they've done. Because now you have a sounding board to be able to go off, to bounce things off of, to help guide you instead of having to figure it out for yourself. That's what I had to do for like 5 years. I'm not complaining. I appreciate the Most High for allowing me to go through those trials and those tribulations because there were so many skill sets and mentality and all the different things that I took from that. And I'm grateful for that. But had I had somebody early, I could have avoided a lot of mistakes. Right? So you have to reframe. Recognition is about drawing out what is already in you. The skill, the wisdom, the discipline, the leadership, all of that's already there. You have to be willing to apply your mind and understand what the game taught you. The game did not leave you empty. There is counsel inside of you. There is wisdom inside of you. There is experience inside of you. But if you do not draw it out, what happens is it stays buried. I've come to realize that the reason why people want to stay in a comfort zone, they don't want to do the internal work, is most people, they don't avoid failure. They avoid mirrors. Having to look themselves in the mirror and deal with the insecurities, the doubts, the fears, the frustrations. They fear that. They're scared of that. And that's the reason why they stay and they play it safe. You see a lot of athletes, when they get out of playing ball, the first thing they run to is coaching. I'm not against coaching. I did it myself. For those that really have a calling to coach, do your thing. For those of you that know that you're called to do something else, and you go to that, you're running from yourself. You're running from yourself. Most athletes overlook their own skills because they became normal. The skill sets that you possess, you don't see the value in them. What feels normal to you may be rare in the marketplace. Being early is a skill. Taking correction is a skill. Losing publicly and coming back is a skill. That's a skill. It's a skill of perseverance. So many people right now are walking around blaming something that happened to them 15 years ago and saying, this is the reason I am who I am and I am where I am. Athletes, we don't move in that way. If anything, we want to get back out there when we fail so that we can correct it and fix it. No, that's not me. That's not the type of player I am. I need another opportunity. I need another shot. That's how we're wired. I can remember when we used to have this thing called one-on-ones, right? Offensive line versus defensive line. Like, say you're a tackle, you're going against an outside linebacker or pass rusher, defensive end, right? And you win the rep. That D lineman like, nah, bro, line it back up. We got to do it again, right? Same thing. If the offensive lineman loses, nah, man, line it back up. We got to do it again. Why? Because we're not accepting failure. Not accepting it. We lost. We don't like that feeling. We're going to do it again. Right? That's a skill set. So, when we talk about other skill sets that we can name, we talked about leadership and discipline. How about strategic thinking? That's a skill set. How about conflict resolution? How about work ethic? How about humility? Because you're in if you play team sports, right? One of the things we talked about, I remember in high school, we used to say, big team, little me, right? Meaning that we put the team before ourselves. Humility. These are skill sets that you possess. Some of you are walking into rooms thinking that you're underqualified in your mind, but your skill sets say something totally different. So you got to recognize it. You got to reframe it. You got to reframe how you see yourself. All right? So the first thing is you got to recognize. The second thing is you have to reframe. You have to reframe the narrative in your mind. Right? You have to renew the language around your experience. Romans 12:2 says this, and be ye not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Meaning what? Reframing is the renewal of the mind. You stop seeing yourself only through the old title and you start seeing the transferable value behind the title. Yahweh gives wisdom to speak properly about what he has placed inside of you. So reframing is not pretending to be something new. Reframing is renewing your mind so you can see the old experience through the lens of your next assignment. This is the reason why I say that your sport is your platform and it's not your purpose. Perspective. We don't see the world how it is. We see the world how we are. And if you have a negative viewpoint on yourself, if you have a negative viewpoint on your skill set, if you have a negative viewpoint on your talent, on your value, then you will see the world that way. We have to switch the perception, switch flip it. That's perception, right? That's where success comes from. We flip it. We flip the success. We flip the narrative. When you learn to flip the narrative, then you'll start to see success, right? I have a buddy named Isaac Keys. He plays diamond on Power. And he was going through, I went to his book signing, and he was talking about his life. And one of the things that he said is, if you hold on to your past, you will hold your future hostage. You got to reframe the narrative. Some of you athletes are thinking about yesterday when right now is right here. What you did was what you did. It's not who you are. And the faster you realize that, the faster you understand that, the more that you'll start to become aware of the opportunities that are actually around you. Man, I can remember in 2018, there was an opportunity that had came around that would have actually placed me where I am today a lot sooner. But because of the way that my mindset was, and because of my lack of awareness, I didn't see it. I was like, I thought I was too big. I was too big to do something like that. Like I played in the NFL, man. But had I reframed and looked at that situation differently, I would have had 6 years of experience in that space. Which 2 years later, I ended up getting into space anyway. And that was in insurance. Like, it's nuts. It's nuts, man. The lack of awareness and how you view things can cost you tremendously. So when we think about how to take sports language, because we're talking about language and reframing, how to take sports language and move it into business language. The game plan becomes strategic planning. The locker room culture becomes organizational culture. Film study becomes data analysis, right? Halftime adjustments become adaptive leadership. The 2-minute drill is crisis execution. How you practice your habits, that's process improvement. Position meetings become team alignment. And if you're offensive lineman protecting the quarterback, which is our top priority, that becomes risk management. Being coachable, that's called feedback integration. I'm showing you what the skill sets that you have as an athlete transfer into business seamlessly if you're able to have the awareness and understanding. So I'll give you an example. I'm not going to say that if I'm talking to somebody in business and they say, tell me about your position. You were a left tackle. No, I'm not going to tell them, no, I wasn't a left tackle. I'm going to say I coordinated protection schemes under pressure, communicated across the line, and recognized threats before the snap, and protected the most valuable asset in the organization. That's a different way of speaking. It's a different understanding. Are you getting this? Are you seeing this? Are you seeing how the skill sets that you possess as an athlete transfer into business? It's been there the whole time. It's been there the whole time. Sometimes it takes somebody to be able to show you and to shine a light on something, right? To shine the light so that you can see it. It's like, I want to say it's in the New Testament. I think it was in the book of Matthew. But there was this eunuch. He was traveling to Jerusalem to worship. And there was a disciple. And the angel of the Lord basically told the disciple, hey, go catch up with that man. So he runs, he catches up with him, right? The disciple asked the eunuch, who he sees reading the scrolls and the scriptures. He says, understandeth what thou readeth. Understandeth what thou readeth. The eunuch then says, how can I unless some man come and teach me? So then the disciple got up on the chariot and he started teaching him about Christ. Why is that important? Because the eunuch had the ability to read. The eunuch understood that there was an importance in the thing that he had within his hand, but he didn't understand how to access it until he was guided. And for many athletes, that's what's happening with you. Not understanding the skill sets that you possess because you just haven't been guided. So I looked at this comment. Somebody said, hey, what is this channel about? It's about teaching athletes how to leverage their skill sets, their knowledge, their ability, and their platform so that they can understand how to identify their purpose and turn their purpose into profit. That's what this channel is about. That's who I'm speaking to. That's my niche. My athletes. I have a heart for you guys. I want to see all of y'all win outside of the game because your platform is not your purpose. It's just the reality of it, right? You got the same experience. It's just a different language in a different room. Some athletes are just one translation away from opportunity. You have the skill, you just need to have the words. So now, we go into frame 3, we talk about repackage. You have to communicate the value early. Titles do not move people like stories. In the book of Proverbs 16:23, it says, the heart of the wise teacheth his mouth and addeth learning to his lips. Listen, you got to pick up books. You got to pick up courses. You got to study. You did a lot of physical work as an athlete, right? In this next arena that you're in, the arena of life, those that have wisdom win. Those that have understanding earn. And when you're able to put them both together, that creates knowledge. That creates skill. Wisdom is the principal thing. With all I get, get what? Get understanding. If I turn this camera around, I have a plethora of books. And in my library, I got more on my phone. Audible books, 200 something books on Audible. Like, and it's not just to show off like, oh, this guy has all these books. No. I study. I study why? I study to show myself approved. A workman needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. I study for all those. I study not only for myself, but for all those that seek learning. That's who I study for. And by studying, it's created me multiple opportunities. I've written books. This book that you see behind me right here, and I'm not here to sell it. I'm here to show you something. This book right here, I've sold over 200 and something copies of this book. I had a phone call. I've sold over 200 and something copies of this book. Right? But here's the thing. Here's what most people don't know. About 175 of that came from one sale, a foundation. Because I was able to share with them the principles that I wrote in that book. And they were like, we need this for our foundation. It was the scriptures and the wisdom of God that gave me that opportunity. And I just put it in the book. I put my experiences in the book. Athlete, no different from you guys. You have the ability to do the same thing. Right? So repackaging is where wisdom teaches the mouth. You learn how to speak about your experience with clarity, humility, and value. A wise man does not promote himself with pride. He communicates, or she communicates, understanding with honor. So there's wisdom. This is where wisdom teaches your mouth. You stop saying, I was just a player, and you start explaining what the game trained you to carry. I just need y'all to get it. I need y'all to get it. You understand work. You understand work. Nobody denies that when it comes to you being an athlete. You understand work. But the work is the statement. That's the statement. Everything else around that you see around you, everything else around you, it's just noise. It's just noise. When you hone in on the things that you're hearing tonight and you really start to leverage this information and apply it to your life, you'll never be the same. I'm telling you from experience. I'm telling you because this is the work that I've done, and it has provided me so much success. One of the most successful things that has happened for me is not the multiple businesses that I own. It's not the different investments that I'm a part of. It's not the partnerships that I've been able to ink. It's none of that. It's the fact that I've been able to leverage wisdom, use it as a skill set. That skill set pays me repeatedly. And now I can do what the scriptures say, buy back my time. I have time freedom. I don't have to work for anybody else. I can do what I want, when I want, how I want, with who I want, and I want to do it with my family. My son has a recital, a trumpet recital that he's doing with his band. I'm gone. I can do that. My daughter has something with dance. I can do that. My other son is playing basketball. He got a game. It's 2:00 in the afternoon. I don't have to ask the boss, hey, man, can I go watch my son do his thing? I can do that. That is one of the most freeing things that you could ever possess. Moving to a space to where you no longer have to worry about how you're going to provide for your family. I'm speaking from the experience of a man that has a wife and children. That is the most freeing thing. And it didn't come easy. And it didn't come quick. It took years. But it came. All work works. The work either works on you or works for you. If the work is not working for you, then allow the work to continue to work on you until it becomes the work in which it works for you, because that's just the way it works. That is the principle. If you're doing the right things the right way, then at the right time, you'll have the right results. When? Eventually. Eventually. Stop putting a time frame on when your success is supposed to happen, because your time frame and God's time frame are totally different. As my thoughts are higher than your thoughts and my ways are higher than your ways. That's what he said. It's in there. So it will behoove you to figure out what the way is that he has for you. Because then that will carry the joy that you need to do these particular things, to do this work. When you think about what your future is, I am so fulfilled in understanding what the future holds. I wake up with gratitude and joy. It's not to say that every day is, sunshine and rainbows. It's not. But the way that my mind works and how I perceive things, I'd rather focus on the positive than the negative. You can look at one situation in two different ways. Give you an example. There were these brothers. They grew up in a house and their dad was an alcoholic, right? So one brother was at the bar, and night after night, he's at this bar. He's drinking. He's throwing them back. And one day the bartender says, hey, man, look, dude, you gotta slow down a little bit, buddy. Man, you're in here every night. It's like, what did you expect? My father was an alcoholic. The other brother, corporate executive, dressed to the nines. He's at these corporate parties, and the people always notice, like, this man, every time the champagne people came around on the platter, the champagne on the platter, you know how they walk past you with the platter of champagne. He's like, oh, no, thank you. Oh, no, thank you. No, thank you. This went on for months. Finally, one of his coworkers was like, man, hey, dude, like, you got to lighten up a little bit, bud. Like, every time you come to these things, man, you never drink anything. He looked him in the eyes and said, hey, man, my father was an alcoholic. What do you expect? Two guys, same environment, different perspectives. What is your perspective? What is the story that you're telling yourself? I told you earlier that all work works. Where did I get that from? Proverbs 14:23. In all labor there is profit, but the talk of the lips tendeth only to purity. Meaning what? Lack. Purity means lack. Athletes, you know how to work. Now it's about understanding how to work on the right things, the right way. So at the right time, you can have the right result. That's what it's about. So when you're talking to entrepreneurs or people that are potentially going to give you a job or whatever it is that you're looking for, here's what you need to understand. Don't only tell people what you were. Tell people what it taught you. The title gets attention. The story creates understanding. The work proves what the mouth can only claim. I'll give you an example. So I was a captain I learned how to hold people accountable without losing the relationship. Or if you're like me, somebody that's been injured, I overcame injury becomes I learned how to rebuild confidence while managing uncertainty. See, there's a difference between pride and clarity. Pride says I'm better than everybody. We've all had that moment. We've all had those prideful moments. But clarity says, this is what I have been trained to do. You're very clear on what it is that you want to obtain. So what I need athletes to do is this. This is very important. I need you guys to stop shrinking your story because you're afraid of sounding arrogant and tell the truth with humility and clarity. Right? But it can't just stop with language. At some point, you have to redeploy it. And that becomes the last thing that we talk about, redeployment, right? You have to apply the skill to the next assignment, right? So Ecclesiastes 9:10 says, whatsoever thy hand findeth to do it with all thy might. For there is no knowledge, no service, no work in the grave whither thou goest. Meaning what? Meaning that whatever you do, do it to the best of your ability because one day you're going to die. There is no reset button. There is no restart. This is not Mario Brothers. You do not get a do-over. There are no extra lives. Stop allowing what you did in your past to hold you down in your present so that you stop thinking about creating a great future. Redeploy is action. Don't stay stuck in your memory. Whatever the next assignment is, bring the same effort, discipline, and excellence to it. That redeployment is going to require consistency. And here's the thing about clarity. Sometimes the clarity it's not even sometimes. I'm going to say this. Clarity comes in the midst of the action. It is important to craft a plan. The scripture says to write the vision and make it plain so they that come can run with it. They that come to take the tablets can run with it. I understand it. That is true. You definitely need to have a vision, but you're not going to have the answers. The learning is in the doing. And one of the things that you possess and skill sets that you possess as an athlete is you are a doer. That's what you do. You're going to go get after it. So I'm saying take that skill set and transfer it into this next space. Don't keep giving your past your best effort while giving today your leftovers. Whatsoever your hand finds to do now, do it with all your might. I want you, if you're an athlete, I want you to commit yourself to where your feet are. I want you to stop looking at your past as your prisoner, look at it as your professor, and let your present be the thing that you focus on. And here's the thing, you don't have to take giant leaps. Baby steps are still steps. If you continue to stay consistent, you get in the right mentor, you read the right books, you take the right courses, You start to identify who you are, who you serve. You find your purpose. You'll start to see you on the road to your promised land. You'll start to find your way outside of the wilderness. Or as the psychologists like to say, that identity moratorium, or that identity timeout, or identity pause. You'll start to reframe in your mind who you are. Marcus Aurelius said, confine yourself to the present. Because the now is the only thing that we can control. Right now, this moment. And this was a lesson that I had to learn. It took me years to learn this. Because I'm an idealist. So we could do this and we could do that and we can do that. It's like squirrels. It wasn't until I said, no, we're going to do this thing that we're doing right here, right now, the right way. Every single day. So that at the right time, we can get the right result when it's time. Use your leadership to manage teams. Use preparation to build systems. Use resilience to handle setbacks. Use communication to strengthen relationships. Use discipline to build businesses. Use coachability to find mentors, and use competitive drive to build something meaningful. Now, I'm going to give you a warning. Here's the warning. The same fire that made you great can work against you if it's not governed. Intensity without direction becomes frustration. Discipline without assignment becomes restlessness. And competition without purpose becomes comparison. This is what a lot of athletes, this is where they fail. Those are your stumbling blocks. Have patience with yourself. The competitive nature that you had to compete against others, now compete with yourself. What are you competing against? You're competing against lackadaisical effort. You're competing against laziness. You're competing against the negative thought processes that you tell yourself. You're competing against those things. You're competing against telling yourself outcomes that you do not want. If I'm going to talk about an outcome, then at least I need to make sure that the outcome that I'm talking about is going to be favorable for me. Why would I talk about something that's not favorable for me? That makes no sense. Find out who your new target is as it pertains to who you're competing against. And I can tell you who it is. It's your thought process. It's you versus you. It's always been. Mike Tomlin used to say, the opponent is a nameless gray face. It's always you versus you. It's always going to be you versus you. The mindset is not retired. It's either being stewarded or it's wasted. So, as we get ready to wrap up, I want to say this here. We started this at the beginning, about an hour ago. And we said, you did not lose your mindset when the game ended. You just stopped reassigning it. If you have been retired for a while, you feel lost. You're doing things you feel like it's not working out. That's okay, right? That just means that right now, God probably has you in a holding pattern. And if God has you in a waiting period, then do like waiters do and serve. That's the best thing that ever happened for me, is when I start thinking about my problems, my issues, and I started thinking about how can I help others. And through that came the opportunities. Through that came the mentorship. Through that came the partnership deals. Through that came the business and the clients. Through that came the investments. When I stopped thinking about myself only and I started thinking about others. Serve others until others find a way to serve you. If God said yes, then I must possess. I will not stress while going through the mess. It is all a test. I wrote that. That was my Dr. Zeus poem. I'll read that again. If God said yes, then I must possess. I will not stress while going through the mess. It is all a test. I told myself that. That was one of the darkest moments when I wrote that. I had lost a lot. Won't get into what it was, but I lost a lot. But I also knew that God didn't put anything on me that I couldn't handle. So I wrote that. And I'm sharing that with you guys tonight. Right? So I want to hit on these points and then we'll wrap up. Some athletes are not stuck because they lack ability. They're stuck because they have not identified what is dormant. Their leadership is waiting on a new room. Their discipline is waiting on a new structure. Their experience is waiting on language, and their mindset is waiting on assignment. When we talk about assignment, some of you guys have probably been trying to figure out, like, hey, how do I identify the skill sets that I have? What is it that I can do to understand, what value I'm able to bring to others? Well, here's what you can do. If you're in that space where you're saying, hey, Tony, I've heard everything that you said over this past hour and 15 minutes, man, I need a step. Like, please direct me on something that I can do that can help me. I want you to go to tonyhills.com and you're going to see an assessment there. You click on that assessment and you take that athlete assessment, and that athlete assessment is going to ask you a series of questions. And with those series of questions, it's going to help you to identify where you are at this moment. I appreciate you guys joining me tonight. I appreciate you listening to me tonight. And I'm going to leave this the same way I leave it every night. I need you to understand that you're more than an athlete and that your sport is your platform, or was your platform. It is not your purpose. You understand that, and you'll start to understand the way that you're going to walk out of the wilderness and walk into your promised land. It's your man, Tony the Tycoon. This is Tycoon Talks. I'm out.